This tour was presented to me through my sports management degree at the University of Canberra. The trip started off with a week of learning at the EASM Summer School in Madrid, where we did projects and group work with fellow sport management students from around the world. In our second week, we went to the UK and listened to a series of lectures at the University of Portsmouth. The second half of the week, we went to London and listened to the governance models at Sport England. Our final week was spent in Switzerland at the University of Lausanne with some very interesting lecture topics, which included legacy planning after Olympic events and a case study from Dow, a business that was contracted by the IOC for the Olympics, and I learnt about the stringent requirements around sponsorship. The lecture topics varied from each country we visited. In London at Sport England, we learnt a lot about governance structures and ways to implement policy to keep people fit and healthy for an active society. In Madrid, there was a lot of variety in topics, with a common theme around sports marketing and sponsorship. Esports was mentioned a lot, and the continual debate if it can be considered a sport or not. I took particular interest in fear marketing, which I hadn't heard of before the tour, and learned that there is strategy around targeting consumers' insecurities and fears. The experiences in Madrid were particularly good due to the other international sport management students and the numerous opportunities to interact with them. We shared ideas for our group project to encourage participation in sport. Moving away from the academic side of the tour, the extra experiences were phenomenal. I went to Glacier 3000 in Switzerland, and that was probably one of the best things I've ever done. I witnessed quite a few live sporting matches which were completely organised through the tour. I saw Real Madrid play live, toured the facilities of Portsmouth Football Club, which are so rich in history. Even on the odd days we had free, I wanted to experience more local sport, and I went to a playoff final in Wembley Stadium, and the atmosphere was just something else, far better than anything I've ever experienced in Australia. It's always good to be mindful that you're in a different country, and not everything you do at home can or should be done overseas. The students had a good briefing from the embassies of Madrid and Switzerland, and the overall message was to just be mindful of the local population and mindful of your surroundings. Legacy planning by Michael Broadley was a key learning outcome that I mentioned previously. Olympic committees around the world in their respective countries are seeking data around the impact, positive and negative, of hosting the Olympic Games. Countries choose to host games because it can enhance a country's image and stimulate the local economy. With that, there are also issues around the environment, corruption, and what we call the white elephants issue, where infrastructure is no longer used after an event. Some of the terms used: initiated and accelerated. Initiated includes IT applications, which are developed to ensure the smooth running of the Olympic Games. Accelerated usually incorporates something that has been upgraded to deal with the demand and increase of people. Transportation is a vital component, and most countries lack the social services for the increased demand needed for the Games. Michael Broadley and his team have researched into this idea of legacy versus impact. London 2012 used the Olympic movement and the exposure that came with it to target the local population to get fitter and healthy. During the Games, they experienced success, but it declined once everything had subsided, and this is what is called an impact. A legacy is a project or infrastructure that continues to be used by the community long after its creation. The design of the Sydney Olympic Park is considered a legacy because all the stadiums are used regularly and enjoyed by spectators. The local population has benefited from Sydney hosting an Olympic Games, and therefore the Sydney Olympic Park precinct is a legacy. Other key learnings in legacy planning are planning on who will run the infrastructure after the Games, who builds it, and who funds it. It's important to know this information and for host countries to consider it because firstly, the nations need to have the funding to host such a globally renowned event. But the host nations need to consider the local population also. Will they benefit from such an event, or will you see an event like Rio, where an already poor country hosted a prestigious event and the local population was not transformed positively from the influx of media coverage and sponsorship? Key stadiums were abandoned and looted because they no longer served a purpose. If you haven't travelled overseas before and you're a bit hesitant like I was, the best way to overcome that is to go with a group. I thought the tour ran extremely smoothly considering it was the first time it had been organised. The tour itself exposed you to experiences and scenarios that are incredibly special and unique, as such our group lunches and dinners where I experienced the local cuisine. The tour was a fantastic initiative that I got a lot out of through learning components and the different lecture topics. You can learn inside a classroom, but that doesn't compare to actually visiting an organisation and learning from the people themselves. I would recommend this tour to any aspiring sports management, sports media, or students who have an interest in sports and are passionate to learn more about the sport with an international context. The world is a big place, but through our love and passion of sport is incredibly small. Thank you.